Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Joined again with Homa Shafii. She was with us last week and told a little bit about her baseball story, but there's so much more to hear from Homa. So, Homa, thanks for taking the time to do two podcasts with me.
You're welcome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story.
No problem. So, we talked a little bit in the last podcast that you came to the United States when you were 11 years old. And just want to first talk about what made your father decide to come from Iran to the United States.
And my father, he actually got his education in the U.S. as well. He came from absolutely nothing. They were very poor as children. His father left his family at a young age, and my father just worked really hard to put himself through school and get good enough grades to get accepted to a university in the US. And he went to UNLV, so he wanted us to have the same opportunity as he had, which was get proper education, and after you're educated, all the opportunities that you can have in the US that you can't necessarily have in Iran. So it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing any of the things that I'm doing today.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty cool, and it was awesome that he was able to have that foresight to be able to create more opportunities for you. And I think especially as a female, let's face it, females have obstacles in the United States as well, a lot more than we'd want to admit to, I'm sure. But I think the opportunities are vastly different between if you were still in Iran as a female compared to being in the United States as a female. So, we talked a little bit about baseball, which is obviously a good old boys club and a male-dominated sport. But it really, as we've gotten to know each other here, it really is kind of just right up your alley, because everything you've done in your life has been in a male-dominated field, from being a firefighter to a peace officer to being on the SWAT team. So I guess what has kind of attracted you to be that black sheep, so to speak, that you refer to as being the one female in the room, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely. I think that some people are born to be put in certain positions, and that God prepares you through your life to be put in those positions. And I think that it started with just growing up in a house where we have a very strict, short-tempered Persian father, and going into high school years in the US of being bullied a lot and getting picked on a lot in my high school years. And it kind of transitioning into part of my college years, as you heard in my last story with the softball teams. So I think God was preparing me to be put in these positions to grow and persevere through, and have this vast experiences to be able to share with others and help others of how to get out and rise above those times. So as you experience being bullied in high school, it's nothing but constant. You're not enough, and you're not worthy, and you're not loved, and you're lacking. That's what you're constantly hearing. Like, I'm not enough, and I'm not loved enough for these people to be my friends. I'm missing something. And I was constantly being fed this message growing up. And it was, when growing up as a Muslim, I believed in God, and I always prayed, but I can say that I always felt like there was something missing. There was like a missing link, whether he wasn't hearing me, or did he really love me, or I had to prove myself to God as well as a Muslim. And it wasn't until I was 28 years old when certain things started to happen in my life where God knew I was ready for my missing link, which was Jesus. But in order for me to get to that position, I had to go through those trials. I had to face those adversities. And he was guiding me, even though I hadn't found Jesus in that time. God was with me every step of the way, preparing me for what he had planned, and preparing me to put me in those positions of defending others and standing up for people that not necessarily can stand up for themselves. So not only did I gain that drive and that passion to protect other people by being picked on, but it was also getting to a place where I had to fail so many times, and getting to a place at the age of 28 where I was in a toxic relationship. And I just began my peace officer career. And in this toxic relationship, I completely lost myself and who I was, and was totally defeated, completely just lost in this bitterness and in this anger. And back in that lying, fearful state of mind of you're not enough. I was back in that place. And I was just, why do I keep going back to this place? And in that moment, I had a few friends that were in my life that played a key role. And each one of them had really specific roles of what God wanted to plant, his seeds in my mind. One of them was my friend Charlie, who was a coworker with me as a peace officer. And he knew I was struggling. He didn't know exactly what, but he was like, "Hey, Homa, why don't you come to my church at one time?" And I was like, "Charlie, I'm a Muslim. Like, I'm not going to come to church. I'm good, And then I ended up moving out of the house I was living in that toxic relationship. And luckily I had my friends Chris and Danielle. They took me in, and Chris was actually he got his bachelor's in ministry and Bible study. So when he was trying to help me through my pain, he was speaking to me in the sense of what would God's word say in this situation. And I couldn't understand it. I was like, I would always dismiss it because I would be like, "Hey, can't you just understand that I'm hurting? Like, I'm hurting right now. That's what really matters." And he was trying to open doors and open my mind to, hey, this is what God's word says about your pain and who you are. And I still wasn't hearing it at that time. And it came down for me with Ron, my friend Ron. Went to him, and he spent hours listening to me. I mean, hours. And he had been through the same relationship as I had been through before. And he told me, "Homa, like, I feel like I went through my pain to be able to understand where you are now." And he just came right out and said, "Homa, you need Jesus." And I visited him at work in his office, and I was on my knees on the ground in his office crying. And I just said, okay, there was nothing more. I had nothing more left in me but to just say, okay, to Jesus. And I was like, what do I do? Where do I start? And I'm actually shaking right now thinking about it because there's just so much emotion that comes from it. But he had me start with reading Psalms 40. And Psalms 40 is David is crying out to God to help him and help protect him, and people that are persecuting him. So when I read that, I just kept reading Psalms throughout those next couple of weeks. And then one day I decided that I was going to go to the church that Charlie had mentioned, a couple of months back. And I walked into Cypress Church, walked right up to the pastor, Ben, and he was like, you're new. And my eyes started filling with tears. And I said, "Yes, I am." And he's like, "What brings you here?" And I just said, "Life." And he's like, well, why don't you come back and talk to me after the sermon? And I sat down at church. I was totally nervous. I was dressed up. Everybody else was casual. You know, I thought that's what you had to do at church. And I just remember crying the whole time. And I knew it was exactly where I needed to be. I didn't know why, I didn't know how. But that journey, it began. And when I started talking to Ben after, I just told him, hey, this is what I'm going through, and this is what led me to walking into your church. And I want to just get to know who Jesus is. And he gave me a Bible, and he told me to read the book of John. And when I read that book, I pretty much, you know, it just really sunk in, and knew that Jesus was my missing link. And I began to do more work into finding him and really making sure that if I was to commit to Jesus, I wasn't 100%. I wasn't going to just halfway do it. I didn't want to have doubts. I wanted to keep doing my research and getting to know him and allowing him to do the works that people say he's going to do. And as he was showing me his works and him healing me during this breakup and during this time as a peace officer, I got to the point of taking the step to my next career, which was the state SWAT team. And that was a whole another obstacle on its own all at the same time. But him guiding me with his strength to get through that relationship, heal properly, understand why I was feeling so much rejection and pain, and the fact that doesn't matter what anybody ever says, thinks of you, says to you, what God says about you, of you being fully loved and you being completely enough, no matter how many mistakes you made, no matter how flawed you are, the compassion that he has for you, the fact that you don't have to prove yourself to him, that he loves you just the way you are, that relief, that weight from my shoulders of years of having to prove myself was completely lifted. And I knew God and Jesus and him working in my heart was exactly what I needed in my life. And that was my game changer and my God, you have my heart. Jesus, you have my heart. I get it. I get what I've been missing. Was realizing the true love God has for me, and that he sacrificed his only son, Jesus, for me, no matter what anybody says. So going back to your question, I don't even remember what the question was. but what was your question?
Well, it was a great answer, but it was really just, what has really kind of driven you into these male-dominated fields?
Yes. So the drive was God. The drive was having to go through experiences in life to be a protector of others. That's one purpose that he has for me. And the other, gain all those experiences to help others get through their times, their experiences, and what they need in their life to find peace and happiness and joy.
So you're very, not sure the right word I'm looking for here, but you use social media as a testimony as well. And I think that kind of goes back to what you said about wanting to help others. But when you just throw something out there on social media, you're not really sure, who's even going to read that and what it might do to them. So I guess just that in and of itself is somewhat of a leap of faith, that you're going to throw it out there and say, Lord, I hope this reaches who it's supposed to. So, tell me why you've kind of taken that stance on social media to share some of those feelings.
Definitely. Well, social media has been used so negatively, and people have used social media to even bully others, and all that superficial aspect of it. And I knew that I could use this for good. And I knew that it took a few people to plant a seed and say one thing for me to get on the path that I needed to get on God's path and live out the purpose of my life and reach all the blessings that have been given to me, all the desires of my heart. So when I put these posts out, I hope I could just do the same for others, even if it's just one person. If you can help one person find their happiness and purpose in life, like what else do you need in the world? There's nothing else greater than that. So I try to use my experiences and the several different types of adversities I've been through, because people can relate. And I'm really glad I've been blessed with those adversities, because if I didn't have them, people can't relate with you. If you have a perfect life, which not everybody does, but if you just show like, oh, I've been successful and I haven't been through any trials, people relate with you when you say, hey, I have been defeated and I have failed. And you're human, and that's okay. But this is what you can do to get towards the right path. So I try to wake up in the morning and I have 30 minutes to an hour of just quiet time with God, and try to see what falls in my heart to put out there, and more often than not, I get one person or one message in my, messenger saying, hey, this really helped me today, or this really spoke with me. And they start asking questions, and that's, so it's selfishly valuable. Like I have to say it's selfish of me, because it brings me so much joy. I don't know if that makes me feel good, that other people feel good and find hope. So
No, I think that's important, and I don't think it's selfish at all. I think that, we as humans, we do want to get that feedback. I mean, it's tough to, constantly not know if what you're doing is accomplishing what you're hoping to do. I mean, because I feel the same way, just with these podcasts and stuff. When I get an email or a message from somebody that says, hey, I just listened to your podcast with so and so, and it really touched me. I mean, I think as humans, we do need that, kind of feedback to keep us going. So I don't think that's selfish at all. And I've actually mentioned in previous podcasts that you're one of the ones that I'll actually lean on through your posts and stuff. I've said many a times, yourself, Leah Miko, Tina Whitlock, and Jenny Finch are, four of my friends that I know that if I'm having an off day, that all of a sudden, one of you four will show up on my news feed with something that almost literally seems as though one of you wrote it for me specifically, So it's very, very cool. So you're definitely helping those without a doubt. So
thank you. Like, that's very humbling, and it really is a struggle. Like you said, you don't know if your podcast even, what it's doing. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be of a great magnitude. You don't want to have a ton of followers or thousands of people listening. It's just that one person.
Yep.
And who knows what that one person is going to do in their life, in the duration of their life. So I'm right there with you when I'm constantly doubting myself, like, am I wasting my time? Is this, no, absolutely. What you're doing is great value, and you just got to push past that other voice in the back of your mind trying to stop you.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. And it's tough, because I know you've, in some of your posts, I mean, you show your vulnerability, And, you know, a lot of times, you know, in today's day and age, we're taught that vulnerability is weakness, when in truth, vulnerability is probably the greatest form of strength. So, you know, how difficult is it for you to like really just throw yourself out there publicly and say, you know, this is it? I mean, I know just last week or the week before, you'd put a post about how you know, were going through a tough time and you battled through it. So, I mean, how to expose yourself like that? I mean, how difficult is it to really throw it out there?
It it is very difficult because you don't know how people are going to take it, because people are still human and they still judge. It's just what we do. We don't want to. And there's still things that I haven't completely opened up about. I'm slowly breaking those barriers, but it is tough. Because people compare themselves to others, like they watch other people's posts and what they're putting out, and not a lot of people show their bad side. It's all happy, jolly lives and all that, and superficial. And in order to connect with people and for people to listen to you and connect with you, they have to know that you're human and you struggle just like them. If you don't show that side, no one listens. They don't care. And that's how you get that connection, and you get someone to be able to place an impact, a stranger, to impact their life. It's finding that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, was there, so through that time, and, you know, before we started recording, we talked about how, you know, you're able to look back now and say that you've been blessed with trials. And, you know, I do the same, where I look back and I look at it and I'm like, well, I was blessed to go through that very difficult time. But in the moment, it's not always easy to look at that trial as a blessing. So, you know, what is it when you're in the thick of it, when you're at the lowest point, that, you know, keeps you focused on the prize, so to speak?
When I'm at my lowest point, I understand that if we're not learning and if we're not growing, we're not living life. It's we're missing out on the purpose of our lives. And also, if we were to not have trials or struggles and feel defeat and feel pain, we would be living this monotonous, mundane life of just blah. Like, you have to feel that pain and you have to feel that struggle to really appreciate when you're victorious and when you have stood up and persevered, to really value the times of happiness. Unfortunately, if we didn't have grief and if we didn't have failure, those happy, those joyous times would not mean the same. They just wouldn't feel the same. So we would live this just boring, monotonous lives. So I guess the trials and the times of defeat not only bring me growth in life and experience, but it helps me appreciate when I am in a position of peace and happiness. So I look forward to that time of getting out of it. Now, in the moment, we're human and we're gonna feel. We're going to cry. We're going to get angry. It's completely normal. As long as our anger isn't taken out on others, it is necessary to filter through those feelings. We can't just, bottle them all up. That's not healthy, but it's the main goal is to not dwell in it and let it bring you down and let it defeat you. You feel it, you get past it, and you look forward, you find hope in the future, and find hope that, hey, God's got your back. He's going to help you through it, and he's going to turn your situation into something 100 times better than you can imagine. Every time a door is closed for me, every time someone has said no, I am so glad, because it was for a much greater reason. So those are the things I look to, but of course, after I let myself feel those feelings, I just got to move on from them and have hope.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge key. I mean, even the other day, I was walking the dog. We went on a long hike, and we were going up a very steep part of the trail, and I was literally, dying about halfway up, and finally we got to the peak, and I'm looking out over the peak, and I'm like, all right, so that it was worth, the burning in my thighs and the burning in my lungs, and the wanting to just roll back down. So I think it really,
It's just roll.
I think it really relates to life at that point, that you really can't enjoy the mountaintops nearly as much if it's not for the valleys and the climbs to get there. So we're just about out of time, but I mean, any last things you want to add before I get to my final question?
No, I mean, those are pretty much some the more important things of what we kind of need to gain as we're going through life, what we just talked about. So.
Yeah. So as I had mentioned, the title of the podcast is The Journey of My Mother's Son, which is derived from, my wife and I getting ready to pack up and live in an RV. My mom did that when she was in her mid 40s and quit everything. And she didn't do it in an RV. She did it in a 1967 Plymouth Valiant. But then the subtitle is Many Little People in Many Little Places. And, it really is about telling the stories of those who are out there making a difference in the world. So, coming from a Michael Franti song called Gloria, where the opening lines say, many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. So, what are one of the many little things that you feel you're doing that makes you proud that you're making the world a better place?
Currently, because we are in a pandemic and we're quarantined, I thought my hands were tied because I can't go out and help others physically. But I know that one of the key factors in being able to go after your goals and being able to be the best you can be is your health. If you are taking care of your mental and physical health, you can now be the best for others and be at your optimal health to achieve your goals, whether it's in athletics or career or longevity in life, being a good mother, grandparent, whatever it is. So right now I'm actually focused on helping people reach their health goals and their fitness goals. And through this journey comes a lot of mental battles as well, and people that have to learn to love themselves as they are now, just as they are, not if they lost weight, not if they've reached a certain goal, but learning that process. So right now, luckily, thank God, I've found a passion to help others in their fitness. And, I've teamed up with First Form when it comes to filling the gaps of your nutrition. So I'm just guiding a group of people towards their fitness goals or nutritional goals, and in the meantime, sharing our journey together of life and getting through those obstacles as well. So if that's bringing me a lot of joy and purpose, and they make my job easier, because I've had some hardworking group of people that are getting the work done, not making excuses, and finally, doing what they got to do to live the lives that they want.
That's cool. Yeah, and I love what you said there about, with the pandemic and kind of having to, to shift gears, because, truthfully, my wife and I thought that we would be, house sold, on the road, meeting people and telling the stories of the people that we meet along the way. Because that was, part of the idea, is that when my mom passed away and I was, looking through all the letters that people would send her, and, thanking them for, the time they had with her, whether it was over lunch or whatever. I thought to myself, how cool it would have been if Mom would have done this, during the time of social media today. So that was really the basis of, us selling everything and taking this journey. And then all of a sudden, boom, pandemic, and everything's on hold. And we're like, okay, how am I going to do the podcast now? And, thankfully through, technology and social media, it's kind of like the journey before the journey of, meeting those, really meeting those people that have been in my network. And
You're about to visit me. You know that, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, every podcast I say, so we keep adding little check marks. Okay. Virginia, Utah, Texas. So yeah, it's, don't be surprised if you get a message. You say, hey, we're in Virginia. Give us the address. We'll grab something to eat or something. So, so it's really cool.
More than welcome.
Yeah, and just being able to trust him and his timing, that there's a purpose before we get out on the road. And I think being able to tell your story and some of the other stories of the people, again, that have been in my network, but I haven't, because I'm, so used to doing a podcast where I'm sitting in front of someone, it was thinking outside of the box a little bit and being able to use technology to tell, some of these stories, these amazing people that I've met through social media. So it's really cool. And I appreciate you taking the time and telling your story, because I think it's a story that can inspire many. And, good luck with the national team. I hope that you make it. And, like you said before, I'm sure you won't have any regrets either way. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that, learning to, win or lose, pass or fail, so to speak, understand that you gave 100% and that, there's no regrets at the end of it. So I think that's a great message for our listeners to take heed of. So again, thank you very much for taking the time. And folks, as always, be sure to check out my website at danclouser.com for other podcasts and blogs. And Home, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, just look you up on Facebook, or is there a website or anything like that for you?
Yes, just look me up on Facebook, Homa Shafii, or Instagram, Homa Shafii. I'm there if anybody wants to reach out for any kind of help. My hands extended, arms wide open. And thank you, Dan, for, I'm just a little person in this little world, but helping share my story, and hopefully it helps lift others up.
No doubt. Again, that's what it's all about. Like the song says, those many little people and those many little places doing many little things. And I think if we all just think about it more on doing little things, the big things come together. So, all right, again, and look forward to